Welcome to the process. This is the process coming out from Radio Soul, aquí en Soul Collective, and we are creating roads. So we're just gonna get into it, kind of, guys. You know what I'm saying? We have the immaculate Andru.
Andru, my bad. I'm thinking of the contractor.
Yeah, man. His name's not Andre.
My bad.
Andru Defeye. I know his government last name, but I'm not going to do that to him.
Thank you.
You
Can't put his business out there in the streets like that.
There's a whole lot of collection agencies that would love that, and I appreciate you not doing that.
Yeah. So we're going to get into it, man. I know about you, but let me hear about your backstory besides the ZFG, besides the laureate poet, you know what I'm saying? Besides the guerrilla, all the guerrilla stuff you're doing in the city with the poetry, besides the Crocker Art Museum, besides, let's get into how you got to that place. And so you coined it before, but I want to hear about your origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came up with a lot of medical complications. Like I had a birth defect. They want to call that shit. I'm a miracle is the way I like to look at it.
Nice.
And so through that, like just over like 30 surgeries by the time I was 5 years old. Like my entire childhood was spent in hospitals, thus making me really angry and just having a lot of frustration and a lot of feelings that I didn't know what to do with.
That's crazy.
At 12 years old, it drove me to a pretty suicidal point. And it's crazy to say, like, at 12 years old that you can be like, I'm done with this. But, like, I was kind of at that place. Like, I was in a lot of pain constantly and just having to fight through a lot of things. So I wrote what I intended to be a suicide note. And it was so good and so impactful and powerful what I was able to do with these words that I was like, oh, maybe I'm good at something.
Right.
You know what I mean? So from there, I keep writing and I write, and that's kind of what I do. Through high school, I always tell people that I used to get in trouble constantly I would just write in this book and I would interrupt class. And those were the two things I did. I didn't participate. I didn't answer questions. I didn't want to have conversations. I did those two things. And now that's what I get paid to do.
That's a beautiful thing.
To write and interrupt places. But through there, I have one teacher, and we've talked a few times about the importance of teachers and mentors in your life. And I had one teacher specifically, Virgil Doogie, who's still on my friends list now, and I invite him out to everything.
Give him a shout out.
That's my dude.
Is it Virgil, Mr. Virgil?
Virgil Doogie.
Mr. Virgil Doogie.
Absolutely. Virgil Doogie.
Yo, quick question. Did they ever make fun of him because Doogie Howser was out around the time?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they made a whole bunch of fun of him. Now, I do take a little bit of offense to that because Doogie Howser was when I was in 2nd through 7th grade. Like, I'm not that old, you know what I mean? We're talking high school, you know what I mean?
On his arm, guys. He's only 32, guys.
But Virgil, that's why you're the super intern.
Yeah.
Virgil Doogie. I went to a continuation high school. I barely graduated. I graduated the day of graduation. My final teacher gave me my final credits, basically because he didn't want to see me come back the next year. And didn't want to deal with me. And pretty much told me that to my face. You know, I wasn't stupid. I wasn't dumb. I wasn't challenged by the traditional school system. So I definitely wasn't challenged by the continuation school system.
Right.
But I did have this one teacher, Mr. Doogie. I was in his newspaper class, and you would think, now I'm a journalist, I would have been into it, and I wasn't. I still just wrote whatever I was writing.
Right.
And he asked me one day if he could see my book, and I said, hell no, you can't see my book. This is my unabridged diary. Right. And he said, I'm not going to get you in trouble. I'm not going to judge you for it. I just want to see what you've been writing.
Yeah.
And he took my book home and he brought it back. And when he brought it back the next day, it had a bunch of his poems stuffed into it. And they were poems about his divorce and how his wife was trying to take his kids and all the emotions.
So he went very personal with you.
Yeah.
And what grade were you? You were a senior?
I was a senior in high school.
That's crazy.
And it would have been like he said when he handed me back the book, like I could get in trouble for sharing this with you. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely like a conversation that we both could have been on like some negative consequences for. Because
it seemed like this was like as much healing for him as it was for you.
Absolutely. And I think like that's he really, so he came back and he was like, so what you're doing is poetry.
Right.
I didn't know that at the time, you know. So he introduces me to Allen Ginsberg and William Carlos Williams and all the beat poets. He's the one who gave me my first copy of the Outlaw Bible of American Poetry, which was all of the people who were writing the things, because I was frustrated and my frustration with my own pain also allowed me to be really empathetic to other people's pain.
Nice.
You know what I mean? So when I go into, you know, I'm out in the Stockton, Manteca area, and I'm seeing folks going through the struggles of poverty, the struggle of racism, and all of these things, it's pain.
Right.
And that level, I related really heavy to it. So him really giving me an outlet and being like, this is poetry. This is, you know, how this works. These are the people who've been fearless in writing before. You know, he didn't introduce me to Shakespeare. He didn't introduce me to Walt Whitman.
It's because you had to have something that you could relate to.
Yeah.
And so he gave you the relatability, and then showed how he was the same as you, and then it kind of broadened your horizons to what it is.
Yeah. And vulnerability and respect as an adult.
There you go.
Like he talked to me as though I was a grown ass man. I was 17. I didn't know anything. He had to be at least in his 50s at that point.
Oh, wow.
He was grown. You know what I mean? But showed me that same kind of respect, where everywhere else, like I was reading Bukowski and I was reading some incredible I got kicked out of class for reading Marx and the Communist Manifesto. Like, and nobody would, as soon as I had these ideas and I raised my hand in history class for the one time that I cared and was like, hey, what's the problem with communism if you look at Marx's whole theory? And he was like, get out of my class.
Wow.
So I'm not allowed to challenge anybody's thought process because they're older than me, even though I'm probably more well read than you are on the subject.
Right.
You know what I mean? And just seeing and experiencing that firsthand judgment of how you look at, like, yeah, I know I'm a troublemaker. I'm on my way to drug addiction at this point. I'm angry, and I'm a continuation school kid who barely graduated. But to think that I don't know things and that you know what I mean, that my opinion isn't valid on the subject, I personally don't raise my hand if I don't have
something to say,
some kind of education on the subject.
I think that's dope, because one thing that I have a theory about, and it's just a theory, that most entrepreneurs or people who set out to do things for themselves are a certain type of person when they're young, and usually they don't fit into that whole classroom dynamic very well, and they push against some of those norms in the classroom. And it's not necessarily because you just want to be like a bad kid or a troublemaker. You actually are, like you said, you had a question that pushed so much against the norm that they were like, hey man, you need to get out, because you're only asking that question to them to cause an issue. Like you found something that you can cause an issue about. You're trying to cause problems to get out of the classroom. And so that's constant, and I see it all the time where youth have something to say, but they're not allowed to say it because of their youth. But a lot of times, if you give somebody the opportunity to be themselves and say things, it helps them grow actually more, and then you can actually, they're more malleable in that sense than if you just cut them off. So I think that's really dope how that happened. When
adults will fess up to not having the answer,
man,
like you didn't,
you don't got to answer, Sway.
You didn't want to talk to me about Marx and his ideas on commodities and how everything is commodified and how this is a broken system because you hadn't read Marx since college.
He couldn't change it.
You know what I mean? Like you would have to go do some research, and it sucks for you in a position of authority to say I don't know.
Right.
But that's like the true weakness, you know what I mean? Like, and it's good because with all of these awful experiences that I had in education, constantly being pushed out and kicked out of class and sent up to the counselor and all of these things, it's really helped me as an as an educator. It helps me to relate when I have those problem kids. I love to go into continuation schools. I love to touch places that other folks don't want to do. Because I know that those aren't bad kids.
Right.
Like, I love to see the faces when I go into continuation schools or I go into a classroom and they have the bad kid that they warned me about, and halfway through, I'm able to engage this kid, and you watch this kid lead the rest of the class, right, because they're a leader. They're a leader.
And then most of the time, kids that they think that are like bad students, most of the time, if you get them on your side, they'll get your whole class in line.
Absolutely.
And, it's funny. We both have done education things, so you know how that works with inside of the classrooms. And actually, really, what you do is you find the kids that are misbehaving the most, and you pour all the love and you can into those kids, and you get them to know, like, and trust you, and then they get the whole class actually together.
Absolutely. Because
everybody already all the way follows them. So if they start being funny and acting up, then the other kids were like, okay, well, that's kind of cool to do. Like, I need to be funny and act up a little bit. Yeah. And even if you had the outliers who were like sitting in the back, like, I'm gonna be quiet and I'm sit there. A lot of times, side note, a lot of times those kids get looked over as well, because those kids who are quiet doesn't mean that they're doing anything or they're engaged. So you really get that whole circle of system, the outliers and the so-called troublemakers, and work on those, and they get to everybody else.
Well, and it's actually, like you said, classroom engaging it's a little community, and how do you engage everyone in the community?
Right.
And that's one thing that Mr. Doogie did. I ended up publishing poetry in the school newspaper.
Because of him.
Because he took the time to be like, okay, you're writing, obviously. What are you writing? Let's figure out how to publish it. Let's figure out how to abridge one of these pieces and put it in the paper and do something productive with it. He went into so if I go in to teach an art class and these kids aren't visual artists and they don't engage like that, then that's not how they engage. And no matter of me being like, come on, it's cool, everybody's doing it, it's art, it doesn't, none of that matters. So
if they're not engaged in that way,
so if
where they're at.
I walk in and I say, okay, cool, you don't like visual arts, but check it out, if you get done with your piece that we're working on right now, I got this beat machine over here and we can get down on some beats as soon as you're done. Oh, I can make some slaps.
Yeah.
Oh, I can make some. As soon as you get this done, cool. Then you don't necessarily have to engage fully in this exercise over here, because you can engage. You're going to engage over here
because you know where that is.
You know what I mean? And it's
you work. You give him one caveat to get to the next. It's like my dad. Funny. My dad was a preacher, and I think
yours too, huh?
Yeah. So it works. It works the same all the way on the lines. It go like this. So my dad said this to people. They used to go out and do like little walking around and talking to people about God and stuff like that. And so my dad used to always tell the people, like, hey, you can't look down on people. He said, here's what you do. He said, you have to meet people where they're at. He said, so if somebody's car's broken down, they don't want to hear about Jesus today. Their car's broken down. They need their problem fixed. So it's like, so what you do, go help them fix their car, build that up, get them on their way, and say, hey, would talk a little bit. He's like, yeah, I'm a minister at this church. I go here. Hey, if you ever want to come by, come by. He said that's a bigger ministry than walking to somebody with a car broke down and saying, God, Jesus, and then walking
pray
away
about it,
and then walk away with pray about your vehicle. It will come back, and then leave, and they're still on the side of the road with their car broken. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's like it's ridiculous. So the same approach your teacher basically took.
Yeah. It sounds like your pops was a lot like mine in that fashion, where Pops was a minister, he is a preacher, but really took the approach of like, I'm going to show you. You know what I mean? The world's a dark ass place, and if you just whatever your light is, let's remove one religion, whatever that light is for you. For me, this community is that light. You know what I mean? But if you share that light, then the folks who are in the dark are going to look at you eventually and go, yo, what do you got that I don't got?
And whatever that dark is for them.
Yeah.
Because that can be a lot of other places. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That can be anything. Like, anything can be a dark place for anybody, but if you're any, like, people see us sometimes and they say, oh yeah, you guys are killing it on business. I really wanted to do that, and they start up. And I have somebody that just wanted to do some real estate stuff that we do, and then he hit me and was like, bro, I wasn't willing to do this, and now he's doing it, but his place was like, how do I do this? And then him seeing me, I went to high school to do it, and he was like, oh, they're doing it.
It can be done.
Like, it's not that hard to do, and
Right.
and so it's that kind of thing for the light, and being that light. I think that's dope. I think that's a dope analogy.
So I'm a quote Dre T here. Dre T gave this amazing analogy the last retreat that we did, and he said, if there's a party at this house the night before, right? Everybody, you wake up, and the house is dirty, it's thrashed, right? Mm-hmm. There's a couple ways to go about this, right? We want a clean house. We want the house to get cleaned up, and we want everybody to help.
Yeah.
So you can go around and go shake everybody and be like, "Hey, yo, wake up! The house is dirty. You need to get this clean." That's one way to go about it. Mm-hmm. How do you respond? No. When the party was raging the night before, and you trying to wake me up to sleep, I'm gonna roll over, and right. Or I'm gonna be grumpy about it if I do get up. You know what I mean? Yeah. Versus if you get up, grab a broom, and start cleaning.
Right.
And then let folks wake up on their own. Yeah. But when they wake up, they look around. Oh, the kitchen's. Oh, he's already been cleaning. Yeah. Oh, the kitchen been clean. Oh, I should probably grab a trash can or something.
Let me get them to do something. I can't just.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, exactly. And it makes it so that you create that. You don't violently wake people up. You can't reach people that way. You can't reach people by shaking them. We all seen the dude with the megaphone in the middle of the street telling us the end is near. You don't reach people like that.
They ignore you.
You know what I mean? Like, it's the same. There's humans. We're such a crazy species. The way that you have to go through layers to get to us. You know what I mean? You got to penetrate the ego and like.
Oh man, ego's a real thing. I've thought about ego too. Ego is one of the most like biggest driving forces within everybody, if you know it or not.
Yeah, yeah. And it's your origin story is so rich. It's like we could probably do a whole like. Podcast video just on that. Yeah. But before we run out of time, I want to get to like how did you transition from that place to the next?
Like what was your mission with the whole ZFG thing? Because I know a little bit about the ZFG from like vibing with you guys a little bit, and Paul being one of my dudes.
I mean, like how did you even get there? Like from where you were at the origin point, you had your teacher. He opened up your eyes to what gift you really had, and you saw where that was, and
going down that road.
And you kind of just made your way to this, and you've created your life in such a way. How did you get there?
A lot of failure. Yeah. I went to. So I get out of high school. I started going to open mics. And the open mic was the first time that I read something out loud. The first time I read something out loud in an open mic, I kid you not, at least half the crowd turned around and someone asked me, "Where the fuck did you come from?" And it was the first time that I was like, oh.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Like I felt good. That was my first like real dose of self-esteem.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So that carries me on. I graduate high school. I get a shitty job at a winery. I'm working graveyard shift, cleaning those big vats out, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I decide that I'm done with that, and I'm going to get a job at the newspaper. I walked into the Manteca Bulletin, and I told them that I was going to write for them, and that if they didn't let me write something to show them that I could write, that I would be back the next day. And then I came back the next day. And it was literally one of those, like, I'm not leaving until you let me write something. And if it's good enough, you're going to hire me because this is what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? Right. So I get in there, and at that point, it was 2002, 2003. The war was Bush hadn't even declared war yet, and I was doing a man on the street column, and I was trying to ask people what they thought about the war, and my editor had me asking about, are you using real or fake Christmas trees this year? And just trying to really,
so you're trying to do some real journalism, and they're giving you...
Small town paper was not having it, you know what I mean? Their demographic is 50 plus white folks, you know, and they weren't really trying to hear all that, so through a crazy series of events, I got fired from that place, and really, like, in a way, blackballed from journalism out there in the Valley, where like folks kind of got this idea of who I was that wasn't really who I was. You know what I mean? So I went to the Bay, and that's where I started making hip hop, and I started really, like, I'd been making hip hop out in the Valley, but I really was like, okay, if you're going to push me out of journalism, then I've been doing this hip-hop poetry thing for a long time, and I really need to get somewhere where I can do that. So I went to the city. get into doing hip hop, meet up with some amazing musicians. And
when he says the city, he means San Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah, absolutely.
For people that are not from Northern California.
Mission District, Ocean Beach.
Oh, Mission District totally changed now.
That's a whole other podcast, man. We were just out there last week on tour, and it's wild to go back to the neighborhood and see how it is now. Mm-hmm. But when I get to San Francisco, things start really picking up musically and all of that, and I find myself in some crazy situation. We're partying with 2 Live Crew and Pete Rock and Planet Asia and Mickey Avalon and all these kids. There's a lot of drugs and a lot of drinking and a lot of just substance abuse,
excess
and neon. That's the term I've given that, is that neon, that lifestyle where like you sit in a room and everybody's talking but nobody's listening. And at a certain point, I was with a girl who was like, yo, you're gonna kill yourself out there, and she lived in Sacramento, and she was like, yo, you need to get out of there, like your soul hurts. I got out of my car one day to come visit her, and I made it 4 steps out of the car, and she said, your soul hurts. Wow. And I was like, damn, you know what I mean? So
yeah, that's deep.
I land in Sacramento. I get myself cleaned up, go through some rehab. I'm working on music again, and my producer runs into this guy named Anand who makes a bunch of beats, and was talking to him, and Anand comes over one day. He's playing some stuff. I hear an AWOL 1 verse, and I'm like, oh my God, you know AWOL 1? And we start nerding out about hip hop, and he tells me about the Soul Collective. And I explained that I'm a writer. He's like, oh, well, we could use a grant writer. And I come in here, and this is a wild story, man. Like, it was my first day clean and sober. I came into the Soul Collective because they needed a writer. I'm going to get a little bit emotional right now.
It's all good. Do it.
And it's crazy because I got Davion, the super intern, here, and I don't think he's ever heard this story.
Okay.
Yes, please do. So I came in, and my chick had just left me. Ooh, wow. It was my first day sober. I didn't have anything, like money-wise, monetary. Like, I had a truck that I was borrowing from a friend of mine at the time that was a V8, and I had $5 that I put in the tank the day before. So I'm on like...
So you were still on E.
Nothing. Yeah, like I drove from Natomas out to the Soul, really knowing like, I don't know how I'm going to get this truck back to Natomas. Right. I don't have money to eat. And I'm like, meanwhile, going through the DTs and shaking and just like trying to hold myself together. And I write this grant for them. I'm not even sure how I did it. And, but when we first showed up, Stell showed up with this cheeseburger macaroni. And to them, it was probably nothing. It was just like, oh, we threw this together. But for me, it meant that I was eating that day.
Ooh. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and then I get done writing the grant, and it was tens of thousands of dollars for a program that we got it.
Okay.
But at that time, at the end of the day, they handed me a check and said, thank you for your work, whether we get it or not. Thank you for your time. Oh. And that was the first time that in Sacramento I'd been valued for my time as a writer. You know, like I had people I started a magazine with some guy who was super shady and like took advantage of not only me, but everybody that I brought into the magazine. Wow. So these folks really they were that light for me. So when I walked into the Soul Collective, these people, I was like, wow, how did they seem so happy. They seem so content. How are they so peaceful? And how did they emanate love like that? Like, I hate everything. You know what I mean? Like,
everything. That's got to be a real dark place.
Yeah, no.
You just hate everything.
Yeah,
I hate everything.
Right.
Like, I mean, there's like even darker points to that story. I gave you the abridged version of like the dark place that story got to, you know what I mean? But like, so that's how I come into this place, and this place worked the same way that rehab and a program works for folks, the same way that the 12 steps work for folks. It's about accountability. It's about looking at yourself and real, like, self-analysis on a deep level. Like, all of these things is what this gave me. You know, I learned that I used because I didn't like who I was. I woke up in the morning looking for some way, like, to literally escape, before I opened my eyes, I'd reach over onto the nightstand to see what was left from the night before. You know what I mean? Like, so it really gave me a reason to like myself.
Okay.
You know, like, I was contributing to this beautiful thing. I had meaningful relationships. These people who I admired so much were like homies. Like, they for some reason were like, yo, this kid's cool enough that we should call him up and see if he wants to hang out today and do some work. You know what I mean? So that to me was like the first step of becoming who I actually am now.
Right.
You know what I mean? All of those scars, all of the everything makes you what you are, right? Like, so, but at the same point, like, that's like April 1st, 2011 is the day that I, either 2010 or 2011, I can't remember exactly which year it was. I know it was April 1st. But that
our
marks
birthday, April 1st.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah, right. Like, and what a fucking day to have it be. Like, where I'm just like, is this one big fucking joke? Like, please God, tell me that tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and it's gonna be different.
Right.
And it was not a whole lot different, but it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then every day got a little bit more different. I described that whole process. There was a year and a half of my life that I was here, and it was literally like the Billie Jean video where he like is walking on the sidewalk and the steps light up, and it was like when you are where you're supposed to be, the path will light up for you. You know what I mean? And it's real important that you take that time to listen to yourself, because you know, you know what I mean? Like, I knew everything that I was doing. I just didn't want to listen to it, and until the universe was like, "You're going to listen to me," like. You know,
that's just how, man. That is truth, bro. The universe